The upcoming stories can all be found in various religious texts, but the atheist content creators telling the stories are drunk. So, whilst the stories are genuine, the details may be embellished. A little. Welcome to Holy Spirits.
Shanda Kathala Tapash Nakonukunu Kibleta Koya. So then I took the cup and not acknowledging it, said, "Praise God, from whom all blessing flows. Open the hatch and down it goes." Now that is some Holy Spirits.
If you were to make a movie of the Book of Revelation, or even if you made a movie about, the Left Behind series, what actors and actresses would you use to cast that movie?
Oh boy, that is a rich question. So many good options. Kevin Sorbo needs to be in it for sure. Kirk Cameron has been in it before, but he needs to do a callback. Oh boy. See, it's going to be hard to answer this question without just running through a list of God's Not Dead actors. So let me think if there's anybody else. What other Christian actors are there? Geez. I guess Hollywood has just been censoring them all or canceling them all because Dean Cain, he'd be good. I don't know. Let's just make it simple and round up an all-star cast of God's Not Dead actors. You think that'd be sufficient? I made a horrible oversight. Brad Stein. Brad Stein absolutely needs to be in this. Are you familiar with his work?
Not really.
He's a frenemy of the channel Zadanza, a Christian comedian who likes to do just really stupid roasts of atheists in his comedy routine. And he tried being in a few movies and is just absolutely insufferable in them. So Brad Stein definitely needs to be in a Left Behind movie in as much of a starring role as possible. So my name is Zod. I had a channel called Prophet Zod, which I've quit making videos on. I have a new one called Mr. Zod. It's a long story, but essentially my interest expanded. I got a little bit tired of talking about just atheist stuff. So on my new channel, I don't shy away from atheism or, hardcore leftism, but I do it within the context of talking about a variety of things like, movies and books and science fiction and stuff like that. So that's who I am. Tonight, I'm talking about Revelation. I was going to do Balaam's ass, but apparently that got taken. That's probably high demand story. So tough luck. But once Revelation occurred to me and I started reading it, I realized that this was just great. And I think the reason is this is just the perfect book of the Bible to talk about when you've had a couple drinks. It just feels natural. Like it's the strangest part of the Bible, I think. And even Christians kind of like to joke brag about how weird it is, which makes sense. But where they go off the rails is where they assume that it's weirdness makes it profound and not just stupid. So I just thought it'd be fun to share a little bit of Revelation with you guys. I have a deep relationship with Revelation. Considering how much of my childhood I spent afraid of having be made take the mark of the beast. We talked a lot about it because I was in a deeply Pentecostal part of Christianity, and maybe it was just a period of my time. So I don't know. That's it. Is that all the introduction you need? Am I good to get into the story? Okay. So Revelation, it's an unusual book, and to understand it, I think you have to get yourself in the right mindset. So I would say, just close your eyes and take a deep breath and try to forget any preconceptions you have. Okay, are you there? And imagine a Christian has read the book of Daniel and thought, I can do the same thing, but for my religion. I think that'll really help you understand this if you've read the book of Daniel. Maybe you haven't, and this means nothing to you. But that's essentially, I think, what's going on with Revelation. Also, some theological course correction. We'll get into all that. So what I'm going to talk about, obviously I can't cover the entire book of Revelation. I had some of the weird visions and stuff in mind, but I started reading the beginning. And if you know me, I rarely encounter an idea that I don't immediately fall in love with. So I fell in love with the beginning of Revelation. That's what I'm going to focus on. So here we go. It starts with a greeting from John, who is what the author of the book identifies himself as. They don't know if he's the actual John or whatever, but he says, greetings from me, John, and the seven spirits. And this guy is always about the seven spirits or the seven whatever. It's kind of weird. He just can't quit carrying on about that. He also always says me, John, which sounds like another Daniel thing because Daniel calls himself refers to himself as me, Daniel, all the time. I don't know how much of that is just what's rendered in English, but it's a kind of on those similarity. He also mentions someone coming from the clouds as he's introducing the book, which sounds like about the most Revelation thing possible, but it's actually lifted straight out of Daniel. So imagine that. Whatever. So after the greeting, he gives an explanation. Why am I telling this weird story? So according to tradition, or what he says in this book, he's exiled on an island of Patmos, I believe. And he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, this trumpet voice tells him to write letters to churches. He turns around and he sees this guy. He has like woolly white hair and eyes of fire and stuff like that. And it feels a lot like the Daniel statue. Do you know about the Daniel statue? Like the head of gold or
Yes.
feet of bronze and all that kind of stuff. It feels like the Daniel statue, but it's not too much like it, not in any of the details. And I think this is the trick with fan fiction. I see Revelation as Daniel fan fiction. This is the trick with fan fiction or plagiarism, is capturing the feel of something without getting too specific about details. And so that, I think, is what's going on here. And maybe I'm being unfair, whether or not this might be plagiarism, or that might just be that this whole vision of a guy and ensuing book of prophecy could have been avoided if he kept himself grounded by putting his face on a volleyball or something. Who knows? It's whatever. The point, though, is that he writes these 7 letters to 7 churches, and these 7 churches are the 7 lampstands, in case you weren't picking up on that. The letters, so I know, I feel like we need to cover the letters, but they're honestly a little bit boring, and I think these are the obligatory parts of Revelation. I don't know if you've experienced this, but churches will allude to these letters when talking about what's good or bad for churches to do, but they're boring, so they don't get too caught up in it. They're padded out with this bullshit like, I'll have to read this. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich, and what he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. So it sounds like basically God sent this guy to be exiled on an island and gave him visions just so that he could write fortune cookies. But other than that, this guy is just like super judgy. All these churches, for the most part anyway, got something wrong in his high and mighty opinion. And mostly this is just stupid, petty stuff about following wrong teachers. And when he corrects them about this, all these letters are correcting them about something. Again, listening to the wrong person, whatever. And he doesn't just say, hey, I think you guys might be a little off here. He always goes straight to full-on threats. So it's like Jesus will spit you out of your mouth. Jesus will shoot swords out of your mouth Jesus will shoot swords out of his mouth at you or whatever. Really severe threats. I don't know where this guy gets off, but it's kind of weird because apparently everything's all about mouths with Jesus. At least once he gets mad. It's strange. I don't know if there's something. I don't know. I don't know if Freud should talk to whoever wrote this or whatever, but it's strange. But this isn't your storybook Jesus. This is pissed off swordmouth Jesus, the one they don't tell kids about. But one church, okay, a couple churches get congratulated for things, but one church gets a pat on the back for testing apostles to find out if they're false. And I'm curious, well, for one, I'm curious how you find a false apostle. Even if you think the Bible is the absolute word of God and that's what defines Christianity, well, you can't back then because they didn't really have the New Testament. But I'm curious how you go about this. It just feels like if you get the deep sense in this book, number one, that they're trying to establish a lot of theology, but number two, that Christians are probably fighting a lot over everything and probably over a lot of bullshit. So it's just interesting to see these little hints that how much Christians are fighting going back way to the beginning and how much Christianity was already warming up to the idea of inquisitions. There is one fun part. I'll get done with the letters here quick, but there is one fun part where he says, yet you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes, which I just thought sounded fun because it sounded a little bit like he was congratulating people for not shitting their pants. And what I loved is that the phrasing implies that a lot of them did, and he thinks it's worth congratulating them because a few didn't, but whatever. Overall, this is just bullying people who don't believe the same thing he does about what an invisible God wants. So essentially just religion, right? This is religion at its core. Now, you might be asking, why are we caring so long about these letters? Isn't Revelation about weird creatures and the mark of the beast and stuff like that? Well, give it just a second. We'll get there. Immediately after writing these letters, and there's really no context to like how this is all situated or how he transitions from one activity to the next. It lays out all these letters, and then it says immediately after he looked and saw a door to heaven. I think it's just up there somewhere in the sky or something. And the guy with the eyes of fire and hair of wool said to go check it out. So he goes up and starts taking a look. And I need to just peek at my notes because I itemized these. But there's a guy on a throne with an appearance of jasper and ruby. And I challenge anybody in the world to tell me what, like, paint a picture of that. What does that mean? Whatever. There's 24 other people on thrones around him, and these are the elders, they're called. And basically all they're there to do is keep falling down and worshiping the guy in the central throne. Tell him how holy he is and stuff like that. There's a rainbow around it, but obviously not in a gay way because this is the Bible, and so they have a shitty attitude about that. I don't know what that rainbow's doing there. And then there's 7 lamps, which represent the 7 spirits of God. Sometimes I guess the 7, was it 7? Were 7 lamps the churches before? Yeah, the 7 lampstands were the churches. I don't know if they're that into the fine details, but the 7 lampstands were the churches. Now the 7 lamps are the 7 spirits of God. Again, him with 7 of everything. But in short, what this scene is, and sorry if I'm getting too caught up on details, edit out whatever you need. But what this scene is just a bunch of people sitting around worshiping God and telling him how good and great he is, which personally I would find a little uncomfortable. They say God deserves this. If I was sitting on a throne and there are a bunch of people on other thrones telling me how awesome I was constantly, it'd just be really awkward. I don't know that I would like that. See, I don't like if I have to just sit there and have people sing happy birthday to me. That feels a little awkward in and of itself. So to have people just telling me how holy I am and how great I am, this is different between me and God, I guess. Also, along with elders, there's like animals. I think there's 3 different kinds of animals, and they're entirely covered with eyeballs, and they just sit there chanting to God that he's holy. So nothing more to be said about that. Let's just move along. In the middle of all this scene, John notices there's a guy holding a scroll. No, not a guy. The guy on the throne is holding a scroll. The scroll has writing on both sides, but it's sealed up with 7 seals, so you can't open it. Now, my first question is, you might be a step ahead of me on this. Tell me if I'm over-explaining, but it doesn't seem like he should know that there's writing on both sides of the scroll if you can't even open it, right? I don't know. it's sounding a little bit like this guy might be a liar. But an angel shouts out who's able to open this scroll. He shouts it to like all of earth, up to heaven, down below the earth. So are they asking people in hell if they can come up and explain? I don't know. But nobody in all the world can tell them how to open this scroll. And I don't know. By the way, I mentioned seals. There's 7 seals. Did I say that already? Probably.
You did, yeah.
Okay. And I just feel like maybe at this point, this guy could chill out about the number 7. I don't know if I've conveyed it, but at this point, it's always 7 lampstands, 7 this, 7 that. He starts to sound like this kid who's like into Star Wars or trains or something, and that's all he can talk about. And you have to understand that even if that's your interest, even if you're really into things numbered 7, not everybody else is. So you got to just, I don't know, learn the rhythm of conversation. You can't make everything about your thing. That's all I have to say to this guy, I guess. So let me pour myself more to drink here. While I'm doing that, whoa, that was a lot. Okay. Try to water it down just a little bit. Sorry. Edit this out if you need to. If this makes good B-roll so everyone can laugh at me, go ahead. I'm putting Sprite in my gin, by the way. It's like it's a little bit like a, what's that thing with gin where you put tonic water in it?
Like a gin and tonic?
Yeah,
that one.
Well, okay, sorry. I'm surprised I'm getting through Revelation if I can't identify that the drink with gin and tonic is a gin and tonic.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
But it's like a gin and tonic, except nobody in my house is going to drink tonic water, so I'm just using Sprite instead. All right, and give me a couple ice cubes too. All right. So, sorry. Okay, he got caught up on the number 7. We're at the point in the story where nobody can open the scroll, and John starts crying. John really wants to see the inside of the scroll, apparently. This is really strange. I don't know. If I was exiled on an island and suddenly somebody pointed me to a door, I went up there and there was a guy with an appearance of jasper and ruby, and you're literally looking at things with eyeballs all over them. There's 3 different types of animals, like a lion or eagle or whatever, and they have eyeballs all over every inch of them, at least as far as I can tell reading the story. I would be so confused and disoriented that I don't think I'd be that upset that somebody couldn't open a fucking scroll. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, so that's where we're at. And I think at this point, it might be appropriate to say a word or two about Christianity's world building. Because if we think about what Christianity believes about God, some of its just most fundamental concepts about theology and the nature of God and stuff like that. First off, I think we need to establish that the guy on the throne is probably God. Does that make sense? The guy sitting on the central throne that everybody worships in the Bible, this is probably God. I can't figure out who else that would be, or else this story gets super, super weird. But the God of modern Christianity is supposed to be like a pure spirit being who's like omni everything, right? Omnipresent, omnipotent, meaning all powerful, omniscient, meaning he knows everything. Basically, God's the full essence of everything. He's also the exalted one. If you're a Christian, well, at least if like a Protestant Christian, like not a Catholic who they accuse of praying to Mary and stuff. But in general, if you're a Christian, you think God is like the exalted one. He's the only one you worship. And it's like there's not ranks of people who are exalted to lesser degrees. So my questions here are, why are other people sitting on thrones too? Are they like second-rate gods, almost like there's a pantheon? What's with these 7 spirits of God? I don't know. They talk about a lot about the 7 spirits of God. And in all your years of Christianity, I don't know how long you're a Christian. Have you ever heard anything about God having 7 spirits? Does that sound familiar at all?
I don't think I was in that particular type of Christianity. I don't think my branch went into the lore that much.
I don't think mine does either. And I've been in a few different See, I grew up Pentecostal, but I also went to a Baptist church. I've been around. I went to Campus Crusade, where there are all kinds of different denominations. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about God having 7 spirits. That just feels really weird. And I can't imagine any church teaching things where God having 7 spirits informs how they worship him or how they behave or anything like that. So I don't know. What this tells me is that Christianity in the earliest church was really super weird, and it had a lot of things left to sort out still, I guess, and probably was just a lot of people with a lot of weird supernatural ideas fighting, and Revelation maybe trying to solve some of those fights. Maybe I'm saying the obvious at this point. By the way, there's a church in Anchorage, which is near where I live in Alaska. It's like the building looks like a layer cake and has some weird thing on top of it. From what I heard, the people in that church practice the earliest form of Christianity that we still have active today. I don't remember the name of it. I can look into it. But yeah, apparently earliest Christianity is way different. Modern Christians, especially Protestants, have this idea that they're practicing the true Christianity and that Catholics temporarily diverted from it into idol worship. And I don't think it's that way at all. I think the earliest Christianity is something totally weird that we couldn't recognize. And I think Revelation is giving us a glimpse into that. Okay. Also, if God's all powerful, why can't he open his own damn scroll? Like, he's sitting there on a throne holding this scroll, helpless to open it, calling out to other people for help. It doesn't seem like a godlike thing to do. Or an angel's doing it. He can't even ask for his own help with his own scroll. Angel's calling out for help because God can't open a scroll. And so he's just sitting there stuck holding his scroll because all-powerful God can't open it. Okay. Sorry, I'll move this along. So then all of a sudden, John saw a lamb. And you might be wondering, why am I telling this story so choppy? Why am I saying it so this happened and so that happened and so on? Well, the reason is because that's what Revelation's doing. It's just like the author just says, and then I saw this, and then I saw that. And so literally, he talks about his letters, and all of a sudden starts describing this door up in the sky. And then he gets done talking about all the elders sitting around God, and then says, then I saw a lamb. It comes off as a little surreal, and I think maybe because it has this dreamlike feel to it, Christians think it's really profound and like some kind of crazy vision of the future. But I think it just comes off as sloppy, personally. I think it's just bad writing, and Christians aren't exposed to enough literature, and so they take it as like really profound. To me, what this sounds like is just a spastic kid who can't stop telling you about their dream. That's the way this comes off to me. So anyway, John sees a lamb. He says that the lamb looks like it had been slain. And I challenge anyone in the world to tell me what that would look like. You're looking at a lamb that apparently is alive, but also looks like it's been slain. So yeah, Christians aren't not nearly curious enough about this. Christians read this all the time. And I don't think they care about these details nearly as much as they should. You're reading a book that has a lamb that they says has been slain and is, spoiler, going to pick up the scroll. But why oh, they just take it. I think they just take it as a metaphor for Jesus without thinking about it, whatever. But is this lamb like a pile of meat mixed with wool? Whatever it is, it feels like it's something similar to like a zombie sheep. And I feel like you're leaving a lot on the table story-wise if you don't give any thought to that or have any curiosity about it. That's just me. But to catch us up where we're at, which I probably don't need to do, God wasn't able to open the scroll. So the lamb picks it up. And instantly, the minute the lamb picks up the scroll, everyone starts singing about how great he is. And I find this weird because the lamb hasn't even done anything yet. All he did is picked up the scroll. He hasn't broken any of the seals yet. He just picked it up. And already people are saying he's great and holy, kind of like they were doing with the Jasper and Ruby guy from before. And so why are you already praising this lamb when he hasn't even done anything? He just, so you remember the story about Arthur and the sword and the stone, right? It's
Yes.
it's like if somebody stepped up and hadn't even pulled the sword out, you're already crowning him King of England when he hasn't even done it yet. They're already singing praises to this lamb. It could just be grandstanding. This lamb could be a poser for all they know. It could like pick up the scroll and have no fucking clue how to pull off the seals, and already they're praising it. And maybe I'm getting hung up on that, but that bothers me just a little bit. So anyway, I think this pretty much gets us to the end of the part I'm going to tell. Sorry, this has already gone a little bit long, but John wrote the letters to the churches. He went up into this, let me see. Yeah, he went up into a door to heaven and saw a jasper and ruby guy surrounded by elders and eyeball creatures, and then saw Lamb pick up the scroll. And so from here, I would make this go on forever if I kept going. But once the Lamb breaks the seals to the scroll, then all of a sudden we see all the weird visions from Revelation start to pop out, and then the story continues. So that's where we're going to trail off.